Hey, what's up, guys? It's Paint Hustle here, the world's greatest mobile painter. Well, here we have another video. In this video, I'm going to be repairing a rear quarter panel into the rear bumper. There's a dent here. As you can see, I'm hammering down the high spots in the metal. It's important to do this because even if you think you see the whole dent, a lot of times the metal is stretched. So it's important to take down that high ridge of where that dent pushes up that metal. That's what I'm doing here. I'm using the sharp end of the hammer. That seems to work real well as far as pushing it down and not denting the panel overly like the bigger, larger, rounder end of the hammer would do. You can see there, I'm just working it out, making sure I got that whole ridge on the top of that dent knocked down here. It's better to spend a little bit of time on it. Make sure you got it all the way out, because the worst thing in the world is to think you got a dent finished and then you put that clear coat on it. You could see that dent or a wobble in it. You're not happy. Customer's not happy. Speaking of not being happy, I recorded the audio for this and I soon realized that it didn't record. So I spent 20 minutes talking to myself. Here you can see I'm drilling the holes in this dent so that I can pull it so that I don't have to use so much filler. Now, different people use different means of pulling dents. Some people will use PDR, which works very well. You can use a spot welder. I use a drill and a slide hammer. So there's really not a right or wrong way of doing it as long as it looks good when you're done and the repair lasts. I'm tapping down a little bit more of that dent that I could see there. I could run your hand over it. If you feel it a little bit, you just got to go ahead and it's better to knock it down too low rather than have any high spots. This is a good customer. This is the fifth time we've actually been back to this customer. Shows you the importance of doing a good job so that you can make, 5 times a customer comes back to you. That's a good customer. So he's been happy with the work that we've done so far. Here you can see I'm using the slide hammer. You don't got to pull it very much. It's got that weight on the end of it, pulls that dent right out. You just want to make sure you have that metal as straight as you can so that you can use as little of that body filler as possible. That looks like it was it. Just a couple pulls and that did it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and use the grinder here. Grind off any high spots. Sometimes when you drill it and you pull it there, you gotta smooth down those drill spots so that there's no high metals there sticking out. So got the metal all ground out there. Next, I think I use the DA sander and I'm gonna go over it with 80 grit after I wipe it down here. Basically, when I go over it with the 80 grit and the DA here, I'm getting it ready for the body filler. You want to make sure that that panel is scratched up real good, every inch of the area where you're going to be applying the body filler. You don't want any smooth areas of smooth paint. Um, you will have problems. You can have it bubble. You can have where it actually lifts from the panel. So that would be bad. You'd have a mad customer on your hands, so you don't want to do that. Make sure you sand everything very well. It's very important when painting. Smoothing down all those edges, just making sure we have a good palette to go ahead and apply that filler to. Just and yeah, you'll see here in just a minute. Believe it or not, I think around this time it's actually slightly, it may here be showing or not, but it was slightly drizzling outside. That's why I got my tent set up there. Wiping it all down. So here I'm using a heat gun and I'm going and heating the plastic bumper. There was an area that was where the plastic looked like it was raised, pushed up. So I like to use my heat gun with that, and I just have a little screwdriver there. I'm pushing the plastic down um, while it's cooling. It's important that it cools so that the plastic hardens and it'll stay in shape. If you just keep it uh, when it's hot like that and you push it in and then remove it, sometimes that plastic will go back to shape. So um, sometimes if you're having a problem with that happening, it's good to have a wet rag next to you and you could wet the plastic and it'll actually cause the plastic to harden in shape so that you don't have it keep going back to its previous shape there. So just pushing that plastic down, making sure it's low so that when I put a little bit of filler on it, it'll be smooth and the customer will not see any high spots or anything low there. So coming back with my 80 grit, just smoothing that plastic, making sure that I have no more high spots in the plastic there. So just grinding it down so that when I apply the filler, it'll be completely smooth. As you can see, this is not sped up or anything. My repairs are very quick. Most jobs, like a small job like this, if it's on a bumper fender or a quarter panel, most jobs in under an hour and I'm done. That includes doing, relatively small dents like this. This is I would consider a small dent. Really, if it's too large of a job, I try to stay away from very large jobs because, to be honest, there's the money's not in that. The money's in doing the small stuff and being quick and moving on to the next thing. And when you get into very large jobs, especially on when you're dealing with customers, and like I said, I'm a mobile painter, so I'm not in a spray booth, so I have to make sure my work comes out clean and most jobs have to be done the same day, so I can't be getting into the stuff that needs to go to the body shop needs to go to the body shop. If they have to take a panel off and be doing those types of repairs, it's better to have it done at a body shop. But for what we're doing here, we're saving the customer money, time, and they get a great product for the price. So here you can see I'm applying tape. I'm trying to apply that so that I can see the natural body line there. So when I do the filler, it's gonna recreate that body line so that it'll be seamless. So you don't want it to be some wobbly body line that's gonna show a repair that would look terrible. So use that tape as a guide. So here we're applying that filler right up to the tape line. I like to go over it just a little bit so that when I pull that tape off, I'll have a nice crisp line of filler. Making sure I don't get it in the actual crack there. That can be a real pain in the butt to get that filler out. So be careful to get that out while it's still wet. I need a new spreader here. You can see I'm using 2-inch tape to smooth out the edges of that. I just need to get some new spreader so that it lays down smoother here, but it did the job. So you can see I'm taking that tape off while that filler is still wet. That way I have a nice clean line. I'll let this dry up for a minute and then I'll reapply the tape so that I can fill the upper portion of the dent. I'm just scraping off a little bit of that filler there from the bottom of the panel. Nothing like watching filler dry. All right. So my camera was running a little low on its battery, so I went ahead and I just you can see I've sanded the filler here. Um, I got that all sanded out. Now I'm applying a water-based primer to fill in the sand scratches here. So I wanted to make sure I'd be able to finish the job and not have the camera run out completely of power. So, like I said here, I'm using a water-based primer. Some people like to use a solvent-based. I like solvent-based because they're very convenient. This water-based primer actually applies much thicker and it's actually better for when using dents. It doesn't shrink up. If you've ever used a solvent-based primer on dents, a lot of times after you're done and you paint the panel, sometimes you can go back if you've used a solvent based and it can have shrinkage. So you'll see little sand scratches sometimes or little imperfections in the area where you used filler. When you use a water base like this, it doesn't shrink like that. Um, so that's the reason I choose to use it when I'm doing dents. It works real well for me. So you're going to see here in just a second that I'm going to use the heat gun on it. It's important to for dry when you're using this. You got to use that heat gun to make that water in it dry all out. Nothing more irritating than it not having cured all the way, and you go to sand it, and then you smudge that primer. It could be a real nightmare to sand that out after you've done that. So it's better to go ahead and cure it up good with that heat gun, and that way it's nice and hard and it's a quality repair. Especially if it's cold out, it's important to have a heat gun right by you because sometimes I literally am spraying that water-based primer and in the cold weather, I notice it has a tendency to want to fisheye if you apply it even slightly heavy. So sometimes I'll just come and do the lightest dust coat with it first to give it uh, something to bite into so that that second coat will adhere better, and it tends to not want to do that fisheyeing effect. That can be very frustrating in cold weather. That's Another reason why sometimes just for small repairs I do like to use a solvent-based primer. It's a lot more convenient. So you could see I'm moving the heat gun uh, all around because you don't want to keep the heat gun in the same area. It will bubble the primer, and then you got a problem. You've heated it up too much. So you got to keep that heat gun moving. You're just really wanting that hot air just to blow on it and keep moving, and it'll do a good job drying it out. So here I'm pretty much done with that. I think the next thing is, yeah, you can see I've sanded it out. I didn't film that. I went over it with 600 with a DA sander, and I did tape the line again on the body line I used a black guide coat spray paint so that I could make sure that all those little imperfections were sanded out real good. Here you can see I'm using turbine paint gun. I don't know if I mentioned it in this video or if it was in the last video, but I do use a turbine system. I don't use high pressure. As you can see, I do not have a large cloud of overspray. If I was using an air compressor, you would have a cloud of overspray and paint. So this saves me money on materials, and also it's what I've been used to and what I was taught using a turbine system. I personally like it. Being in residential zones, I don't want to have a big cloud of overspray. If there's any cars that are near, you have to worry about overspray. But like with this system, it's very minimal overspray, so it's very good for what I do. So I'm just dusting that color in and trying to blend it out so that make sure I have good coverage and that paint is blended out so that you can't see any, you know, you don't want to concentrate the color too much because then that could be noticeable to the customer. This was a very easy, just a standard white color, so it wasn't a pearl or anything, so this was not a difficult color by any means. Just blending that color out. As you can see here, I ran out of paint there, so I do a little trick here. I blow the paint back out and then I actually turn the gun upside down. You can get that last little bit of paint out so you don't got to go mix up the color again. I just needed a little bit more just to feather the color out. And here in a second, you'll see I'm going to be applying the clear coat. The last stage of the paint here, it was good timing too, because as soon as we finished clear coat in this car, it wasn't more than 1 minute, and the customer put the car in the garage, and it started raining. So we were seconds away from disaster. So here I'm using a fast drying clear. Um, I like to use it especially on rain days since I'm outside. I never know if the lawn guy is going to come by. It seems like every time I'm in the middle of spraying my clear coat, here comes the lawn guy with a blower blowing leaves and grass at my freshly painted car. Sometimes I'm working on Mercedes or BMWs, and you know sometimes I wonder if they're thinking, but I guess everybody's got to do their job. So I'm putting the clear coat on, as you can see here, in a nice heavy coat. That seems to work best with this fast drying clears. If I'm using a clear that's a slower drying clear, a lot of times I will put a dust coat on to give the clear something to bite into. It stops a lot of fish eyes when you do that. Um, and then I'll come over with a nice medium coat, and then it'll have a nice finish on that. But with this Fast Dry and Clear, I like to do one heavy coat, and that has served me well for many years. So, like I said, the only danger in doing that is if your panel is not 100% clean, or if there's any contaminants on it, when you go and you put a heavy coat on first, you stand a much larger chance in having fish eyes. So when you do that first real light tack coat, that is going to, and then you come back with a nice medium to heavy coat after that, after a few minutes of it drying, it's going to cut down on fish eyes exponentially. So it is a safer way of doing it, but I was pretty confident in this. I knew I had did a good job cleaning it, so I wasn't really worried about that.